Hello and welcome to Via Arn, and this is the iPhone 12 mini. Being the first mini iPhone, it has a huge appeal to people whose hands are not big enough to use a big phone like the baseline iPhone, the Pro or the Pro Max single-handedly, but still want an iPhone that looks like it is a flagship, not like one that came out 6 years ago, like the new generation of iPhone SE. However, being extra small does come with its own downsides, and also its benefits. And in this video, those are exactly what I'm going to go over. So let's get into it. And first up, we have the design. This is where you'll see the biggest change in the iPhone 12 mini, as it is the first of its kind. While the iPhone 12 stands at the height of 5.78 inches, the 12 mini stands at a height of 5.18 inches, which is noticeably smaller. And when you compare to phones like the iPhone SE or the 8, which are known for being small, this phone's actual height is even smaller than theirs. Although the screen size of this phone is actually bigger than the SE and the 8 at 5.4 inches versus 4.7 inches, the body is actually smaller. Although the iPhone 12 mini looks almost exactly like the 12, there are some differences that come with it being noticeably smaller. Firstly, it has the smallest speaker grill out of all the phones in the iPhone 12 lineup. But even though it is smaller, it still gets plenty loud and is very good quality, so you don't have to worry about it. Secondly, as the size of the notch hasn't been changed to adjust to the change in size of the phone, the notch seems much bigger compared to the display. So if you already found the notch an inconvenience, this might amplify it. And finally, the keyboard. Since the screen size decreases, the keyboard has to also be adjusted for that, making it smaller to fit the 5.4-inch display. So if you have big stubby fingers or generally large hands, this might cause some problems for you. However, putting the negatives aside, the small form factor make this phone a lot more pocketable than the massive Pro Maxes and even the standard size iPhone 12. Also, it is easier to reach the ends of the screen to pull down the control center or the notification center, which is so much of a pleasure if you're using it single-handedly. Overall, I like the different form factor and size that is the iPhone 12 mini. It opens up the iPhone to a new target audience who wants a small phone but don't want to sacrifice on the features that the modern phones have. And next up, we have the display. So the generations before the iPhone 12 lineup, the baseline iPhones like the 11 and the XR have always been equipped with a substantially low-quality 720p display, which although didn't really make a huge difference to the average person, it felt very underwhelming to know that you paid a large amount for the phone and yet your display is not even 180p. However, the good news is that Apple decided to break that chain with the iPhone 12 and the 12 mini, so now even the baseline phones have the resolution of 180p. The display of the mini sits at 5.4 inches and it is crisp and very smooth to use. Even though it is missing a high refresh rate, it is still very snappy and very responsive. You won't notice a lag on this display. Some might feel at first that the display is too small to watch content on, but you should eventually get used to it. The big notch is still present, but you'll have to learn to look over it. I did so as well. There is not a lot of things that can be said about this display as it is a very standard 180p panel that is widely used in a lot of smartphones nowadays. It is no means a bad one, but there is nothing very extraordinary about it. Moving on to the performance. The iPhone 12 mini is equipped with the A14 Bionic, which like its predecessors and successors has been one of the most reliable chips currently in the smartphone market. The reason being is that Apple engineers these chips specifically for their phones and they're fully optimized for that specific phone. This is the reason that reviewing the performance of an iPhone especially is very repetitive, as each year the new chips are incrementally getting better than their already outstanding predecessor. This means that the difference between the two is hardly noticeable. And the same goes for the A14 Bionic in the 12 mini. It's outstanding at every task that's thrown at it. It can get slightly warm if you're doing some heavy tasks like gaming, but it doesn't really affect its performance. Overall, you can be assured that the iPhone 12 mini will not fall short in terms of performance. Next up are the cameras. We have a lot to talk about in this category. If you've been following Apple phones closely for the past few years, you'll probably agree that the camera experience of Apple will not let you down. This phone comes equipped with a 12-megapixel wide sensor with f1.6 aperture and a 12-megapixel ultra-wide sensor with f2.4 aperture. These two lenses are the same that are equipped in the 12 Pro and the Pro Max. And you know Apple won't be cutting corners on those phones so you can rest assured that this model has no trade-offs either. So starting with the photos from the main camera, they are high-class stuff. To me, they appeared very natural and lifelike and tend to use processing as minimally as possible. Some things Apple's actually known for. The colors in most photos turn out bright and vibrant, which I really like, and something you can describe very pleasing to the eye. The HDR is also great for the most part, with the balanced fixed exposure and very few instances where it is a miss. If you look at the night mode though, I would say it is a hit or miss. The conditions are not too dark, and the lens only needs to stay open for a slightly more time, then the photos will look great. They give off a nice nighttime vibe and do a great job in maintaining their quality. However, as the conditions become poorer and the environment is much more darker, the quality of the photo drops. Since the lens must stay open to capture more light, the photo ends up becoming very soft and loses its sharpness. Often, it is still not enough. And because it's too dark, the photos are not usable. So night mode on the iPhone 12 mini is great in some scenarios and not so great in some others. Overall, I would not worry about the reliability of the photos from this camera. In most conditions, they produce fantastic results. For an average consumer, they'll be more than enough. I also feel they can compensate for, like almost all flagships nowadays, in most circumstances for a digital camera. You won't get the obvious customizable and manual controls that are present on a digital camera, which make a few situations a little tough to shoot, but I believe the quality is still very much present. And the same can be said about the video. This phone lets you shoot up to 4K 60 FPS, and without a doubt, the quality is up there. The video maintains a smoothness, has great color science, and this is just an amazing video camera. Apple is known for having the best video from the main camera out of all of their competitions, and the iPhone 12 mini reflects that as well. As you can see in the footage, the video looks natural and yet so vibrant. Once again, very reliable and more than enough for the average user. And now let's turn our attention to the ultrawide. The ultrawide allows you to explore your creativity by unlocking a new opportunity for photography. It can add a new sense of style to your photos, but it can also simply make it more convenient, for example when taking a group photo. I would say it compares nicely to the main camera, but with slight worse HDR and slight fringing in the corners of some photos. It definitely is reliable enough to produce great shots in great conditions, but I wouldn't replace it with the main lens. If you flip the phone to the front, we have a 12 megapixel selfie camera. In terms of both video and photo, the selfie camera can handle shots pretty well. Ideal conditions will produce the best and the most reliable shots, but I feel it can hold itself in slightly harsh environments such as direct sunlight. I would say it is pretty reliable for general things like vlogging or just general selfies, but it is not as good as the cameras on the back. All in all, I would say this camera system compares pretty well for today. Both the main and the ultrawide lens serves both enthusiasts and average users nicely. Even though Apple doesn't provide great manual or customizable features in the stock camera app, the automatic mode alone produces amazing shots when compared to flagships. And finally, we have the battery. The battery of the iPhone 12 mini is probably its weakest point. The phone comes equipped with a 2227 mAh cell. So considering today's standards, the spec of just the cell alone is not big at all. Although the phone itself is quite small, including its display, which leads it to use slightly less power than a regular sized phone, it still feels it could have been better. If your use is generally heavy, such as social media, gaming, browsing, or even watching videos for long durations of time, the phone will most likely won't last you the whole day. However, if you look at the current market, oftentimes you'll see where the battery of a phone is small, it is often compensated by a fast charger. However, over here it's not the case. You won't be getting a charger in the box, and the fastest one Apple provides in their store is 20 watts. On a positive note though, it is compatible with the new wireless technology of Apple called MagSafe, which allows you to equip accessories magnetically to the back of the phone and even lets you charge wirelessly through a MagSafe charger. But again, that only goes up to a 15 watts. The problem was slightly fixed in the new iPhone 13 though, so if you want to consider that, the option is still there. Keeping this in mind, if you are a light to medium user, the battery should be plenty to get you to the end of the day, but a heavy user will most likely have to plug it in at least once before the end of the day. In conclusion, the iPhone 12 mini is the first attempt at a tiny flagship phone. It definitely isn't for everyone, especially those with huge hands, people who prefer large displays, or people who require big batteries. But for a user who doesn't mind a small form factor or is actually specifically looking for one, a slightly smaller battery than the regular iPhones, this phone will work just fine for you. This phone packs all the flagship features from the regular 12 and even some from the 12 Pro, like the cameras. So based on this review, I would absolutely recommend it even in 2023. Considering its price and also the continuation of iOS updates for at least the next 3 years. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you have any feedback or if I've missed something in the video, please leave them in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.